everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the dailysheeple.com's News Shot. Fox News had a very interesting piece a couple of days back, and it regards New Jersey's new opioid laws. Now, of course, you know, we've been fed a bill of goods about this alleged opioid epidemic. I'm going to get into that in a minute because it is not an epidemic. There are things that are not labeled epidemic that far exceed the deaths associated with opioids. But we'll get into that in a minute. This to me is the equivalent of a crime against humanity. To make it harder for people to not be able to obtain adequate medication to relieve their pain is absolutely horrific. And I know this firsthand because it affects my wife and I on a personal level. Now, this New Jersey law is very interesting because it takes restrictions to a whole new level. Listen to this. This is Fox News reporting. They say 1 week before New Jersey implements one of the nation's toughest regulations of prescription opioids, doctors are raising concerns it could go too far. It goes way too far. We're already way too far over the edge of too far with regards to this. You know, it's interesting. Before I go any further, I just want to muse for a second and wonder why they don't track suicides because of pain. Now, a lot of people say, well, you know, how do you track that? Believe me, you can just take the people that you know were in chronic pain and have blown their brains out because they can't get adequate relief or because they just live in pain 24/7 in agony with no quality of life, who've basically lost everything. And I would say that is an epidemic, if you want to talk epidemics. How about we treat the problem? You know, fix the problem instead of treat the symptom. The problem in America is pain coupled with a pharmaceutical industrial complex that relies on the profit. The profit margin on these drugs are huge, unbelievably huge. And then, of course, what happened was in the late 90s and early 2000s, you had doctors that were not adequately trained on some of the dangers of this kind of stuff, of, you know, knowing the signs a little bit better of what's legit and what's not. And believe me, that's not an easy task. I want to say that too to the doctors out there that may be listening. I'm telling you, you're not in a good situation with this. Because really, on the one hand, if you think about it, what do you have? On the one hand, you've got doctors who are genuinely concerned with helping people. That's why they become doctors. At least I would hope that would be their primary drive. And then on the other hand, they have to worry about the DEA sniffing down their neck, get worried about their practices being raided and shut down, their computers and records being confiscated, the possible loss of a medical license. Happened to my old primary care physician. He's since passed away, but one of the best, most compassionate, smart human beings I ever ran into. And he fell prey to Big Pharma and the fact that being a compassionate person, there were people that would take advantage of him. And they would go in and say they were in pain, and then they would go out and sell the pills on the street. And what happens? He gets raided. He loses his license to prescribe scheduled medication and is sanctioned. When really, who should be held responsible for selling the drugs? And how can he tell, you know? You can tell, but so much. You know, if somebody's a good actor, how do you tell? How do you measure pain? But the people that are in legitimate pain are stuck between a rock and a hard place because now they can't get the adequate medication they need. Listen to this. The law limits initial opioid prescriptions for acute pain to a 5-day supply, though it allows doctors to renew it for another 25 days if a patient remains in pain. But as a measure of the stricter checks and balances, the new rules call for doctors to have a consultation with a patient about a request for a prescription renewal to ensure it's really needed, which means that now doctors have to spend double the time with people for the same problem when in reality, they really don't need to. New Jersey's law, it says, is tougher than national guidelines for prescribers, which limit initial prescriptions to a 7-day supply, which again is asinine. If somebody's in chronic pain, 7-day supply, all you're going to do is inconvenience them. And then they have to go back. And the doctor's inconvenienced. And it's ridiculous. Now, doctors agree that the opioid addiction epidemic, which, listen to this, that has led to hundreds of overdose deaths and thousands nationwide. Again, if you take a look at death by NSAIDs versus death by prescription drugs, and I'm not talking about street drugs, far exceeds it. And then many of these deaths can be avoided. And I'll get into that in a minute. But listen to this. Dr. Robert Handler of Essex Morris Pediatrics said doctors might be able to be financially compensated if the amount of time is increased. They're going to have to. I mean, they're spending more time with these patients. So what happens? What happens here? What happens is doctors now have to spend more time with patients, which means they got to charge more. People can't afford this already. It's crazy. Dr. Carl Hart, if you don't know him, brilliant man out of Columbia University. He writes, doctors don't need more opioid training. The public needs education. I totally agree. I think doctors need to be more aware of the fact that their patients are suffering and increase the humanitarian portion of this. But I got to tell you, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And what we have to do is, again, raise public awareness. Listen to this. Consistent with the long American tradition of avoiding the real issues when it comes to euphorogenic drugs, mandatory opioid training for physicians serves as another fantastic distraction, but does not address the real problems. Absolutely. Listen to this. The major concerns related to prescription opioids are overdose deaths and addiction. While it's possible to die from an overdose of an opioid alone, this is rare. And this is important to know. Only about a quarter of the thousands of opioid-related deaths each year occur because of a single drug. Okay, so let's put this in perspective. Combining an opioid with another sedative, such as an alcohol or a benzodiazepine, causes many of these deaths because people don't know the dangers of mixing the two. You don't combine opioids with other sedatives. You can't. Now, a lot of people don't know also that in addition, the opioid overdose antidote naloxone, or better known as Narcan, that should really be made available to all patients who are prescribed opioids, because naloxone now comes in multiple forms, including a nasal mist, which makes it easier for family members, friends, and caregivers to administer. And what you do is, if you have this, it's the antidote. They don't die. You can prevent the deaths. Why are we not providing this to people that get prescribed pain pills? Problem solved. Easy. You can save many people from dying. Just you given that, oh, well, you're enabling them. Okay, so let's let them die. That's a better option. A less publicized but related concern is acute liver failure, because popular prescription meds like Percocet, Vicodin, and Tylenol 3 all contain relatively low doses of an opioid, but they contain a considerable amount of NSAIDs, which have been proven to kill more people each year than prescription drugs, the opioids. When you look at death by NSAIDs, comparatively speaking to death as a result of pain pills, it far exceeds the pain pills. What's the epidemic? Dr. Carl Hart writes, excessive acetaminophen exposure is a leading cause of acute liver failure in the United States. How is that not an epidemic? Why is Tylenol being allowed to be sold on the shelf? Where is the outrage? Some individuals seek a heroin-like high, unwittingly risking liver damage by taking too many of these pills. Why? They put it in there on purpose, folks. It's there specifically to help mitigate the problem of opioid addiction. Because if you have an addict, of course, well, let's just rot their liver, they'll die, problem solved. So the problem there is not the opioid, it's the acetaminophen. And really, acetaminophen should be removed from all opioid formulations because of the fatal risk. Now, Dr. Hart writes, to be clear, the vast majority of opioid users do not become addicts, but a small number do. One's chances of becoming an addict increases if they're young, unemployed, or having co-occurring psychiatric disorders. That's why it's critically important to conduct a thorough assessment of the patient prior to prescribing opioids, paying particular attention to these factors. But that training's not going to address the concerns. And it places additional burdens on the physicians, just like New Jersey's new law, which places additional burden on physicians, and this in turn will decrease the number of physicians that are willing to prescribe the medication, and it creates a shortage for patients. My wife, who is permanently disabled as a result of a complication of childbirth, has to go over 600 miles to a doctor in another state just to get adequate care. Just to find a doctor that gives a damn and doesn't view her as a liability. How is that acceptable in anybody's eyes? If you go to an emergency room in pain, I threw my back out, there's not compassion. They look at you immediately as a pill popper, as, that's pill-seeking behavior. Because I threw my back out? Really? I mean, what's the purpose of going? And then what do? They charge you how much? For what? So what does it do? Doctors are unwilling to prescribe. You go to the emergency room and you're labeled an addict. So people can go for a lot less money and a lot less scrutiny because, believe me, drug dealers don't give a crap. They don't ask questions. They don't care about you or your problems or anything else. They deal in one thing and one thing only, cash. You pay them cash, you get your stuff, problem solved. New problems generated in that, A, you don't know what you're getting, what's mixed in, what it's cut with, how strong it is. And B, it creates a whole new criminal element out there and creates a whole new set of problems. And then because you don't know how strong it is or what's in it, you also create the increased risk that you'll have more people become addicted to it. But this was the plan all along. This was the whole purpose behind the war on drugs. It's in the Nixon tapes. He said it best. The war on drugs was specifically created to target two of Nixon's biggest enemies. The hippies on the one side, the anti-war hippies, and the blacks who wanted more civil right protections. And they were giving him trouble. And he wanted to make the problem go away. Enter the Controlled Substances Act. And then enter the CIA pumping these drugs into the inner cities and into the streets of America to help foment the crisis. And later down the road, let's privatize prisons and industrialize them so that these private prisons can make great profits and enact mandatory minimum sentences to keep them populated, to keep them fully stocked with slave labor. That is what the war on drugs is all about. That is the truth. So the truth is, there really isn't an opioid epidemic in this country. The truth is, there's a pain epidemic in this country. The truth is, Big Pharma has a part to play in this and profits handsomely from this. But so do the private prison industrial complex and our non-representing representatives who put these mandatory minimums in place and will not change the law, even though it would be to the benefit of this country to do so, and instead enact more draconian legislation, both at the federal and state level, that rob people of their quality of life and oftentimes lead them no choice but to blow their brains out because they just can't take it anymore. And folks, that shouldn't be acceptable to anybody here in the United States or anywhere throughout the world. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's news shot, albeit an extended news shot. Feel free to comment below and visit our website at thedailysheeple.com. Have a great day, everybody.